In the previous chapter, we witnessed the terrifying power of Danking Shen as he unleashed the dragon-cleaving art. His immense sword energy clashed with the exalted double dragon's double dragon emergence, leveling the sacred mine's land for hundreds of miles. The sheer might of a Genesis stage expert left everyone in awe, realizing why Danking Shen could dominate the Western lands with ease. Let's begin the chapter. The battlefield was a scene of chaos as two great powers clashed. Explosions erupted continuously, the raw energy shaking the very ground beneath them. The deadlock persisted, but with each passing moment, their strength waned. A sharp crack rang out, and Danking Shen's sword vanished into thin air. At the same time, the black and white dragon conjured by the exalted double dragons crumbled away. Both sides were pushed to their limits, yet the battle wasn't over, just as their attacks collapsed. A single trace of power surged between them. It struck with precision. The powerful dragon force slammed into Danking Shen's chest. He staggered back, groaning in pain, blood spilling from his lips. Simultaneously, two sharp sword waves whistled through the air, slashing past the exalted double dragon's shoulders. Crimson lines appeared, marking the damage they had sustained. Neither side had emerged unscathed. The fierce clash between master and disciple ended in mutual suffering, with neither gaining the upper hand. The crowd watching the battle was stunned into silence. Danking Shen, known as the greatest in the Western lands, had managed to hold his own against his two former masters. Even in a 2-against-1 scenario, he fought to a draw. Despite the outcome, the three combatants were left with complicated emotions. Exalted Heiran glanced at the wound on his shoulder and sighed heavily. "Shen, just leave." Old-timer. Exalted Bai Mei's gaze shifted between the battered battlefield and the sacred mine. The mine's aura, once familiar, now seemed foreign. He let out a long sigh. Danking Shen's eyes trembled. He wiped the blood from his mouth and glanced at the imprint on his chest. His internal energy felt like it was boiling over, a stark reminder of how close he was to his limits. He understood now. Continuing this fight would only result in further injuries on both sides. Defeating the exalted double dragons was beyond his reach, and so was the sword. A bitter smile played on his lips. "The exalted still care about the peace of the Western lands," he murmured under his breath. He gave a deep bow to his former masters before vanishing from sight. The exalted double dragons exchanged concerned looks. Exalted Bai Mei frowned. "Old-timer, are we just letting him leave with the sword?" Exalted Heiran shook his head thoughtfully. "There's no sign of the sword in the cave. That means he must have it. He created all this commotion to prove he could take the sword openly. Yet, even though he lost, I doubt he'd leave it behind. 2-against-1, and we were evenly matched," Heiran continued, examining his wound. "If he had drawn the sword, we'd have lost." Exalted Bai Mei's expression grew troubled. "Old-timer, you're right. We planned to give him the sword, but as he said, that old freak from the central area is on the move. Without the land's treasure—" Heiran's eyes darkened. "What will come, will come. Even if we had the sword, it wouldn't make a difference. That old freak likely has his own divine weapon. When he brings it here, we'll still be no match for him. It's better to let Shen take the sword and fight for his beliefs. Regardless of the outcome, we'll have no regrets. He's already stronger than us?" Bai Mei nodded reluctantly. "You're right. The last time we failed to protect his beliefs, we forced him to leave. At least now we can make amends by letting him have the sword. We sealed the heaven-reaching pavilion to keep the sword safe, but who would have thought he'd walk in so openly and take it? Ha ha ha! What does it matter if that old freak from the central area comes?" Shen took it and left. Bai Mei's laugh faded as a thought struck him. He frowned. "But how did he sneak in? Did he really slip past us?" Heiran chuckled. "What's done is done. He has the sword now, so what does it matter? With that, he vanished, his voice lingering in the air. We need to contact the experts from the other 3 lands. That old freak won't wait. Bai Mei raised an eyebrow, then nodded, and disappeared as well. Yet neither Danking Shen nor the exalted double dragons realized they had misunderstood the entire situation. The exalted believed Danking Shen had taken the sword and created a spectacle to prove his worth. Meanwhile, Danking Shen thought his former masters had hidden the sword deliberately and let him leave as a way of driving him away. Both sides were wrong. The prized vaulting sword of the Western lands was not with Danking Shen. It had been in Zhuo Fan's possession all along. When the exalted returned, they dismissed the crowd, their thoughts weighed down by the encounter. Meanwhile, Zhuo Fan observed the events through his screen, a sly smile tugging at his lips. The misunderstanding between them worked perfectly in my favor, Zhuo Fan thought with satisfaction. Danking Shen remained unaware that he had been made the scapegoat for Zhuo Fan's schemes. It's all thanks to a lack of communication, he mused. Despite their past bond as master and disciple, the tension from their broken relationship prevented them from having an honest conversation. Pride kept them from addressing the smaller details, creating the perfect conditions for Zhuo Fan's plan to succeed. If Danking Shen had overheard Heiran's words after the battle, he might have questioned the situation further. That doubt could have unraveled Zhuo Fan's carefully laid plans. But Danking Shen, ever prideful and honorable, chose to leave without pressing the issue. In his mind, not winning meant he had no right to claim the sword. Zhuo Fan's smirk widened. This way I can move about without a care. Fiend Yang, one of Zhuo Fan's companions, noticed his sudden change in mood. What's got you so perky all of a sudden? He asked suspiciously. Zhuo Fan raised an eyebrow. Isn't being the top middle 3 sect cause enough for celebration? Ha 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 ha. Fiend Yang looked puzzled. But the exalted already announced, our rank. How come you're happy only now? I just came to? Zhuo Fan's eyes darted nervously as he forced a smile. Fiend Yang's eye twitched. This guy is being weird again, he thought, rolling his eyes. The announcement was made an hour ago. Why is he only reacting now? Deciding not to press further, Fiend Yang shrugged it off. The group helped Zhuo Fan back to his room, intending to leave once he recovered. Their mission at the Double Dragon gathering was complete, and the fiends couldn't wait to share the news with their sect. As Fiend Yang left, he called out with a laugh, Zhuo Fan, get some rest while I work on our bragging speech for when we get home. Zhuo Fan merely smiled, closing the door behind him. The moment he was alone, a familiar voice startled him. Kid, you should leave soon, too. Even though we've only known each other for a few days, I'll miss you. Zhuo Fan's heart skipped a beat. He whipped his head around to see Danking Shen sitting there, his face clouded with disappointment, a jug of wine in hand. See, Senior, what are you doing back here? Zhuo Fan stammered, forcing a smile to hide his panic. He didn't figure anything out, did he? Zhuo Fan thought nervously. Danking Shen's gaze was distant as he sighed. I failed. The exalted were prepared. They took the sword and I couldn't retrieve it. Zhuo Fan's mind raced. That can't be. I saw Senior wounding the exalted. If not you, then who else in the Western lands is worthy of the sword? He said, offering flattery while trying to gauge Danking Shen's true intentions. Danking Shen took a long sip from his jug, his sorrow evident. Zhuo Fan's heart pounded, as he maintained his facade all while calculating his next move to keep his secret safe.